morning, world. I'm Steve Rao, the host of Pod and Roku TV's World Edition. Today, I greet you live, not from the All-America city of Morrisville in North Carolina, the 8th largest state in the United States, but PBS Carolina, where I just completed my first show of the year on Black Issues Forum as our political analyst here on the PBS Carolina's team. Today, we're going to dive right in with a very special guest, a longtime friend of mine named Hill Caro, who is a CEO of a sports management firm, Sports Properties, Inc. And he's here today to talk to us about a game-changing announcement in North Carolina, but it's something that the country and the world needs to hear about, the FISU World University Games. So we're going to welcome Hill Caro onto the show right now, and he's going to introduce himself, and we're going to talk for a few minutes about this. Hill, welcome to our wonderful show.
Steve, it's an honor and pleasure to join you on the show. Thanks so much for asking me to be a guest, and I'm looking forward to our discussion this morning.
Fantastic. So for those of you, for those listening, could you just give us a quick snapshot of your firm and what you do, but more importantly, the World University Games, and what? And 2029 is when North Carolina won the bid. But tell us a little bit about your company and sports, and then how this came about.
Yes, we have a small company that does what most people would call sports tourism these days. We also do major sponsorships, such as naming rights and things along those lines. But sponsorships all go together with hosting and attracting sports events, which you do not only for the benefit of all the participants, such as the athletes, but also those are big economic generators these days in local communities. And it's become a very, very important part of the overall tourism market across the world, which is the largest industry on the planet. And sports tourism is not just big here in America, but actually in many other countries of the world, and it continues to grow. And so that kind of leads into the World University Games. We've spent 5 years as of this month working to try to attract what is considered the world's second largest global Olympic multi-sport style event, the World University Games. It's for college and university athletes from ages 18 to 25 from all over the planet. It typically brings together about 150 countries and can represent as many as 600 plus colleges and universities around the world.
Fantastic. Well, congratulations. We're going to bring in our panel and just have an interactive conversation, but I think it's fascinating. It's a good break from normally that we talk about political issues and things like that. But go ahead, Mark, bring in the guests, and just going to talk to Hill a little bit about the World University Games in the few minutes we have with him. We've got with us Shaquille Latimer, who's actually from Australia, lives in Australia. We've got
I don't live here. You're going to get me in trouble with the tax office. I keep telling you.
We have Lee Newton Rhodes and
Good morning.
Mark
And
Lee.
we also got David Glass, who'll be speaking with us as well about some things going on in the legal field and all in that space. But before we get to that, I did have a question for Hill, because he actually mentioned it a little bit earlier. I've heard a lot of folks talking about NIL, name, image, and likeness. A lot of the schools and colleges seem to be very much excited about it because it seems to be a way that our athletes can actually make some money while actually being in school and all in that space. So I'd just love to hear some of your thoughts around that, since you are in that sports lane and everything. And then I had a question about some of the economic things that go on, including with the World Economic Games. But I just thought I'd start off with that name, image, and likeness, because a lot of people may not even understand what that's about and its impact on the sports world.
Yeah, well, I'll start out by explaining a little bit about it, and then say that I'm not an expert on NIL because our company doesn't really get involved in that, but I can explain maybe the implications of that with regards to the World University Games and hosting it here in the United States. Name, image, and likeness, as you accurately said, NIL, as everybody refers to it by its acronym these days, was passed by the NCAA, which regulates college and university athletics in the United States, a couple of years ago and has continued to grow. It was brand new at the time. And like you said, it was intended to provide a way for athletes in colleges and universities to have some means of additional financial income that could potentially help them as they make their way through school. And by that, I mean help them in terms of not only, their brand and marketing, but help them specifically financially to afford the cost of school and perhaps do even a little better than that. So it's been complicated because, it was new. The rules are kind of evolving as to what's allowable and what's not. What you've generally seen happen at a number of the larger universities is what is called collectives, where the alumni can form a group where everybody can help contribute, and or businesses can work through that to engage athletes or provide funds to athletes to help represent that collective out in the community and beyond. And then there are individual athletes doing their own deals and all. And actually, some of the top income producing athletes are some female athletes in the U.S. So since they haven't always been able to be at the same level as the men's sports, which have been going a lot longer in the NCAA, that's a very good kind of equality setting mode that NIL might be helpful with. Where it could potentially come into play with the World University Games is the United States is currently the only collegiate university system in the world, to the best of my knowledge, that has gone forward with something like NIL. You might see some other countries possibly do that, but no other countries in the world have athletics integrated into their colleges and universities at the level we do here in the United States. So that's already a distinction. But one of the things we were thinking about, we're required as part of the World University Games to do a large cultural program with the games. It's not just all about sports. We're also required to do a world conference, and we're required to do a major educational program. And the educational program is both for all the athletes who will be participating in the games, as well as it can be open to the public as well. So we were thinking already that NIL could be a good topic for that. Even though our games are 6.5 years off, maybe by that time people have figured out what all NIL really is and can be. So that's a potential way we could kind of tie it in. We could educate kind of the rest of the world on the U.S. system. It's good points, it's bad points, and they might be interested in perhaps utilizing that as a way to, again, help college and university students who are engaged in sports have some additional income streams to assist them with the cost of their education and beyond.
My question is, real quickly, how many sports are involved in this? Is it all the sports? Do they work with different facilities? If other, when they do this in North Carolina, how does that work, Hill?
Yeah, there are 18 sports in the games, and that's per the international organization. The rights holder of the games, or the owner of the games, FISU, as you mentioned, their acronym before, it's the International University Sports Federation, okay. And they're headquartered in Lausanne, Switzerland. And these games are long-standing. They've been going since 1959. They were founded in Torino, Italy. And as a matter of fact, they're returning to Torino. The winter games are returning. There's a winter and a summer games every other year in the odd year, except, of course, when COVID had caused a gap in the program. But I just came from the Winter World University Games in Lake Placid, New York, that started last week and is concluding this weekend. And that's the first games they've been able to have since 2019. And it was going very, very well. It was very exciting. They've got fantastic facilities there. And the Winter World University Games has a smaller number of sports. The Summer Games have 18, as I mentioned. Of those 18, it's and they're all Olympic sports, at least slated for our games in 2029 here in North Carolina. And of those, many of the biggest sports you would typically expect in Olympic Games, track and field, swimming, diving, tennis, basketball, volleyball, gymnastics, but also some smaller sports, table tennis, taekwondo, judo, fencing, and badminton, among others. So we'll also, among those 18, they let you have 3 that you choose yourself. And they have to approve, of course. And the 3 that we've recommended, again, that are all Olympic sports, are baseball. We have the headquarters of our U.S. Olympic governing body for baseball right here in the Raleigh-Durham area of North Carolina, and softball and rugby 7. So that comprises the 18 sports of the games, and we're very excited. We have to. The event is so big, we have to stage it between downtown Raleigh, North Carolina, and the Greensboro Coliseum complex in Greensboro, North Carolina. The good news is in that footprint, there are 19 colleges and universities with over 250,000 students in a typical fall or spring semester. And we're going to use at least 13 of those colleges and universities to help showcase the sports of the games.
Hey, one of the other quick questions I had and everything, Hill, and then I'm definitely going to get to some stuff with David as well, is I know a lot of times people have been very much excited around the growth around sports and how sports can be an engine in economic growth. I know that I want to say that in Chicago recently, they're building a new stadium. I want to say it's near the O'Hare Airport and everything in that space. I'm actually here in Durham, North Carolina, and I know that Major League Baseball has required somewhat of an upfit of the newer stadium and all in that space. So in that sense, it's very much driving some economic growth, and that is seen as a wonderful thing for cities. But I was just wondering your take on sports and tourism as an economic engine in the growth of areas and all in that space. And I've just given 2 examples that I was aware of, and some people are very much excited about that. Sometimes people are concerned about what impact it can have on a negative side as well. But I'd just love to hear some of your thoughts.
Yes, no, actually, that's why sports are growing in the tourism sector, because they're perceived as a great engine of economic growth and a way to showcase a community. And that's not just for big cities like Chicago, like you mentioned. You're in Durham, and you mentioned, Durham isn't near the size of Chicago, but the Durham Bulls baseball team there is the most famous minor league baseball team on the planet. So that's given great brand recognition and awareness to Durham. And as you said, there's economic impacts right now from expanding and enhancing the stadium. And the team is slated to be there for a long time to come, drawing people from all over, and those impacts from restaurants, hotels, etc. Yes, even for the World University Games, recent third-party economic impact studies that have been done for the games, they've totaled anywhere at the low end from $150 million in local regional economic impacts to as many as over $300 million, depending on the market the games have been in. So quite significant, and people see that as an important aspect of it. And that's why, like, our state legislature has appropriated some funds to go towards helping us do the games. The majority of money will actually come from private sponsorships and all, and from private sources. But it makes for a good public-private mix, and the whole reason they're willing to do that is because they see the important economic impacts that it brings. Beyond economic impacts, again, like the World University Games get over 3,000 hours of television broadcast time, not just on linear TV, as they call regular traditional broadcasts, but also streaming all over the world. And the worldwide audience is typically over 400 million. So think in terms of not only bringing everybody into your community and those direct impacts, but being able to have folks all over see your community, learn a little bit about it, perhaps, hopefully be positively impressed and maybe want to visit there sometime, which will have extended economic impacts off into the future.
Hey, Hill, I've got one other quick question, and it actually revolves something that Nick is very much involved with, and I'm involved with this network and all along those lines. And I'm actually going to put us on the spot and everything. Is there any possibility that the World University Games could be aired here on Pod TV? And if so, what do we need to do to make that happen?
There you go.
The answer to that is all right. So to get the games last week when it was awarded to North Carolina, we signed about 60-page contract with the international governing body, and it specifically covers TV in there. And we negotiated a lot of those points. To start with, the bottom line is we actually do get the broadcast rights in the United States. And we'll be working on how that will be put together, and I've actually had talks with the president of ESPN Sports, the president of CBS Sports, Turner Sports, NBC, et cetera, to lay the groundwork for those conversations, which will be coming up. But FISU, the international governing body, does a streaming service called FISU TV. You can actually download the app and watch the end of the Winter World University Games in Lake Placid right now over the weekend. And so that would be something we'd have to discuss and see what, the possibilities are. Keep in mind that the effect on the ability to do it on Roku TV and on your podcast would be not just coming from the international governing body, but from any U.S. broadcaster we got involved as well. So that'll be somewhat complicated, I'm sure, and we'd have to work that out. But now that you raise a question, I'm taking notes on it, and I'll put that into the conversation and see what the possibilities are.
Fantastic.
That's what I like to hear.
We're going to keep him for a few more minutes. Mark, I'm getting some requests. I want to share the live link with Hill Kara so he can send it to all of the people.
I was actually going to do that right now and everything.
So it was sort of last minute. I didn't get to do the live link for all of you, but we can send you the link and then we can broadcast. We can showcase it together.
No problem at all.
But thank you so much. But I think we got a few more minutes with him. I think this is really exciting. The one theme I think is particularly during this time, how sports can bring people together. On the show, we have very heated debates sometimes about politics. My phone's always ringing off the hook just with all the things going on nationally, internationally. But to come together and to compete and to have the educational component, the cultural component, I think it's really, really great. So I look forward to continuing to work with you, Hill, to make this happen in North Carolina. And for those, whatever we can do to support you, in terms of just making this a success and eventually sharing the message with our viewers, we're willing to help out in any way we can.
Well, thank you, Steve. To your point about bringing people together, as you know, in our state, our legislature is predominantly one party, and our governor is of another party. And the good news is they all came together to help us get this event. So, the governor was very involved in the process, and actually a document from him is part of our contract. And like I said, our North Carolina legislature actually has set aside some funds in a reserve fund that'll help us out with conducting the games. And even very divergent constituents, if you will, are brought together by sports. And that's very, very important. And I think that holds true around the world. And we need to use sports to continue to bring our planet together as much as possible, or any other music or other things that can do that, because we don't need to have all the divisiveness that we have now. And that's why I've gravitated towards this type of work throughout my career, because I really enjoy trying to bring as many folks together in a common cause that's bigger than any individual initiative. And I have found that when and done successfully, these events, everybody goes away, no matter what their ideology is. They go away really pleased that they all participated in this and with a good sense of pride and confidence. And it helps them go and do other things together as a team. And even within our area of North Carolina, we're going to have 5 cities as hosts: Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill, Cary, and Greensboro. 5 counties as hosts: Wake County, Durham County, Orange County, Alamance County, and Gilbert County. And the state of North Carolina and America. We actually represent America in this event. So all those constituencies have to come together and work together. And I think if we do this successfully, like we've done other major events in the past, that's a team that can go out and help solve other major issues or overcome challenges we have now: transportation, housing, things along those lines. And that can only be good for everybody.
Hey, Hill,
Yeah,
along those same lines.
I have a slight complaint, but I also have a solution for you. So the slight complaint that I have is that I heard you say earlier, I think that this was sports for university kids aged between 18 and 25. So that excludes me. That means that I'm too old. So may I suggest that you have a mature age entrance part of this. And for broadcasting rights, I will insist that if I'm playing sport with a whole heap of 20-something girls, that it gets broadcast on Pod TV. But I will actually just ask you to expand on the University Games, if you may, because you have talked a lot about America being involved, but it is the world Games. What's the turnout like? Obviously, the Olympics, Australia loves to watch Australia and New Zealand. Get up there. I'm sure you guys love to watch the United States and Canada get up there. What's the turnout like from your international participants?
It's very, very good. It's usually at least 150 countries participate in the summer games. Being up in Lake Placid for the winter games. The winter games are about 20% the size of the summer games. To give you an idea, the summer games, what they call the official delegation, which includes about 7,000 to 7,500 athletes, plus coaches, plus support staff and all, is roughly 10,000. So that's the group we have to house, feed, and get out to their venues for and ceremonies for the games. And to give you an order of comparison, the largest event in the world, the Summer Olympic Games, the delegation is 15,000. It's capped at 15,000. So this is 2/3 the size of the Summer Olympic Games. Now the Winter Games their total delegation is about 2,000. So like I said, about 20% of the Summer Games. And even in Lake Placid at 20% the size, they had almost 50 countries participating. And yes, Australia was one of them in winter sports. And so, yes, and I was there at the opening ceremonies, and all the countries march in just like in an Olympic event. And it was really gratifying. Of course, the biggest cheers, and actually one of the larger teams was from Ukraine. So that was really neat to see everybody. They actually got a standing ovation when the team from Ukraine came in. And so that was really heartwarming. But teams were from all over the world, and we would expect the same for games in North Carolina in 2029.
One other quick question.
Australia's a little disappointed that New Zealand currently has the America's Cup, but so we know for our Australian audience, is Australia? Normally we have the America's Cup. You guys don't have it. Is Australia doing ourselves proud? Are our youngsters over there kicking American butt, or are we need a bit more experience? What's happening with our guys?
No, I will say from having actually done work in Australia on the Sydney Games, my previous life I was working with the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee and actually helping raise the funds for the Salt Lake Olympic Games, as well as help stage the Olympic Committee presence at games all over the world. So I've spent some good time in Australia. And I will have to say that Australia loves sports just about more than any other country I've ever been in. And so that part is fantastic. And but no,
it's not that we love sport. It's just that we like beating other countries. But I look forward to welcoming you back to Australia for the Olympics in 2028 over in Brisbane.
Well, we want to thank
just really quickly, and I did want to bring in David as well.
Go.
But one last question for Hill is, a lot of times when things are built, and I don't know how much actually new structures have to be built, then it's a matter of what to do with the repurposing of them afterwards. So how many of the game facilities are already existing? How much will have to be built? And is there any plan for them afterwards is my quick question and everything.
Yeah. Mark, the good news is you asked a really great question, because one of the things that helped us land the games is, in kind of an unprecedented fashion, because of the great infrastructure we already have online with our fantastic universities and our municipal and even some private facilities we'll be using for the games, we actually have 100% of everything we need for the games in place. All the housing and dining for the athletes is in place. It'll be divided into 2 athlete villages, as they're called. One will be at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill on their South Campus. One will be at UNC Greensboro. And then all the competition facilities and training facilities. Keep in mind, you got to have a bunch of additional facilities for everybody to train during the games when they're not competing on a particular day. Those total over 50 venues, and we've got everything in place. And that actually helped us score really high in the bid. And that was one of the reasons they wanted to come here. The other main thing tied to that is that many of our facilities are on our university campuses. And if you travel all over the rest of the world, including in Australia, the other universities in the world don't always have the type of athletic infrastructure on their campuses like we do here in the United States. So that was a real attraction to them too. So the short answer to your question is we don't have to build anything new. The good news is there actually are some new facilities under development in the Triangle, and that right now we don't have to use them for the games, but some of them seem to offer some attractions that we might want to use them for the games. So it's only going to get better. And so we don't have to worry about building something and having to worry about the after use of it. It's already going to be there.
A quick question for you. I've traveled a lot through the United States, and again, knowing what's happening in Australia, both in 2000 and 2032, I know I said 28 before. What's the story with transportation? Because international people generally are not going to fly into North Carolina's international airport. They normally enter through New York, Dallas, or LA, where most people enter from. How do they get to North Carolina and to these locations?
Yeah, well, actually, you'd be surprised at how many direct international flights we have in North Carolina when you put our three major airports together. And we have two of those airports are going to be within the footprint of the games. So Raleigh-Durham and the Greensboro, Winston-Salem area have two of the three. The largest airport in North Carolina is Charlotte, and that one is about an hour and 20 minutes from Greensboro, the westernmost point in our game's footprint. And between those, there are numerous international flights, particularly in Charlotte, which is the second largest American Airlines hub in the world. And so we're kind of fortunate in that regard. But in general, there will be routing through the Miamis and the Washington, D.C.s and the New Yorks of the world, kind of coming from the, Europe and territories that way, and then coming from the Pacific side, they may route through the West Coast markets like Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, etc. And luckily, we have nonstops from all those major markets out west directly into the Raleigh-Durham or Charlotte or Charlotte airports. So we've got very good connections. They're used to that aspect. And so we will, and then once they're here, we'll have a very sophisticated ground transport system that not only gets them from the airport back and forth and all their equipment, but also takes them to their villages, gets them around, and we'll have a circulating system that gets them among venues if they want to watch their teammates, and then a specific dedicated system that will take them out to their training and their competition site. So we've done this before. We've done two really big events here in North Carolina in the same area. What was called the U.S. Olympic Festival, kind of our country's domestic Olympics over about 2 decades. And we did that in the 80s. And then we did the World Special Olympics Summer Games in 1999. And between those, we're taking it up to the next notch, obviously, with World University Games, but we've got at least the basics for how to do that.
Sounds good.
Sounds fantastic, and I wish you guys all the best.
We're going to thank Hill Carroll. I want to thank Hill Carroll. I want to welcome Sasha Starr to the show. He's going to update us on Ukraine. I'm going to leave with Hill today because I got to do another show at PBS. But thank you all so much for being with us. We'll be talking more next week about some breaking news in North Carolina politics that I've been already getting some questions about, but I'm going to bring that out. And Josh Stein, the Attorney General of North Carolina, who's actually a close friend of mine, announced his candidacy for governor. So the first time in my life that actually right before he made the announcement, he texted me. I'm really happy for him. I think it's going to be an interesting race, though. So we'll talk about that, and hopefully we can bring the Attorney General on our show to come and talk about his vision for North Carolina and his perspective as an attorney general that's doing a lot of interesting things around the country. Anyway, Hill, thank you all so much for being with us, and
Thank
we'll
you.
be back next week for another.
Thanks for coming.
University Games.
Have a blessed day.
Thank you, guys.
Appreciate
Have a
that.
great show.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Right.
No, appreciate it. And I was actually going to pivot because I'm going to bring in David Glass, and I know that David Glass, a lot of people have been paying attention to a icon that passed away. Well, actually, the daughter of an icon, that being Lisa Marie Presley, and all along those lines. And I know that they were in a heated custody battle, her and her ex-husband, and all in that kind of space. So I definitely wanted David to talk about that and some of the things that might be going on, because it seems like there might even be some opportunities for him to get a sizable portion of the Presley estate and all along those lines. But I don't want to put words into David's mouth, but I'd love to hear his perspectives on what's going on in that case and what even regular people need to know when they are thinking about estate planning and things of that nature. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about what happened with and is happening with Lisa Marie Presley, as well as just the general notion of estate planning, particularly if you've got a sizable wealth and all of that. I don't fall in that category, but there might be some others that are watching that do.
Sure, absolutely. So obviously it's a tragedy when anyone dies so young. Lisa Marie Presley dying at 54. And she had been in a heated custody and child support battle with one of her ex-husbands, with whom she has 14-year-old twin daughters. That case was centered on, were the children safe with her, given her ups and downs, her various fights with drug and alcohol addiction, and her recent family tragedy of losing her oldest child, her son, to suicide. And so all of that had been playing out in the courts here in Los Angeles County for about 2 years. The first piece of information is all of those family law cases die. When a parent dies, the family law case dies along with them. So the father is the 100% custodian of these two children. And the child support that was awarded, that Lisa Marie paid to him to help him raise the two daughters, that's also gone. But there is an opportunity on a couple different fronts to revive some of this litigation. And to revive the litigation, the father would have to take the case to probate court. In LA court, the court that handles wills and trusts is probate court. And so the father could start a case in probate court saying that Lisa Marie Presley's estate, whatever income she still has coming in from various assets, is still, in a sense, rich enough to pay the child support that she was ordered to pay before. In terms of custody, the only type of new litigation that could erupt is if Lisa Marie Presley's mother, Priscilla Presley, felt that she wasn't getting enough time with these children. She could go to probate court and start a Grandparent Visitation Act. Here in California, a parent of a deceased parent can go to court to try and get the court to dole out specific time so that they can maintain a relationship with their grandchildren. So those are the potential pieces of litigation. Whether they actually happen is probably unlikely. And so I'll go back to the child support first. Lisa Marie Presley, there's been a lot in the news. She ran through $100 million. She got $100 million when she sold her father's publishing rights 10 years ago. And most of that is gone, and she owes money to the government for taxes. But she still, upon her death, owned her share of Graceland, a continuing vibrant business. And so her estate probably has some assets and probably has some income coming in. It's not likely that it's going to make sense for the father to come after the estate because the two daughters hold 2/3 of that Graceland estate now. Lisa Marie Presley's estate plan transferred her rights in Graceland directly to these two daughters. So they will have more than enough money to support private school or horse riding lessons or going to college, anything they want to do. They're going to have the own money. The only question will be who will manage that money for them. So the child support case is a hypothetical, but it's not a likely practical case here in Los Angeles. And then in terms of custody, all the reports that I've seen in the media are that Priscilla Presley has gotten along with her former son-in-law on very good terms, that he allowed Lisa Marie Presley to have 50-50 custody of these twins, largely because she had moved back in with her mother and her mother was helping her. And so it's likely that those good relations will continue, and hopefully they continue, because these 14-year-olds obviously are going through one of the toughest periods of their life after having already gone through the divorce of their parents. And so hopefully all aspects of this family come together to support them.
Can I ask you a quick question there, David, just on the custody thing? Correct me if I'm wrong, because I know the laws are a little bit different in each country and each state. But at 14, the children generally, just hypothetically, if Michael Lockwood said, no, you can't see your maternal grandmother anymore, the kids could say, we're 14, to hell with you, Dad, we're going to go see her, right? Like they have a say at this age, right?
They do have a say, and under California law, at the age of 14, a child's preference can be taken into account. So if Priscilla Presley brought a case to probate court and the children expressed, we have a preference, we have an idea of when we want to see our grandmother, the court has to take it into account. It's not a final say. At 14, it's one of 12 or 13 factors that the court has to look at when it determines what's in the best interest of these children. Where should they live? Where should they sleep? Where should they go to school? What pediatrician can they see?
Let's just play a hypothetical here. Let's say that he actually challenged this in court. He won 100% custody, and the court says that, but she has no right to see the kids. The kids decide, no, I'm not going to abide by these rules. Right. I'm going to spend the weekend at grandma's house. What can the courts do about this? Or what's the LAPD going to go around and say, righto, kids, we're forcibly going to take you out of here? Or what remedy would there be?
Right, and it's a gray area as to what the police would do, what the parties would do, what a court would do. I've had judges rule that if the kids leave, for example, Dad's house and go to the grandmother's house, that the grandmother is ordered to return them immediately. I've had other judges say children vote with their feet. Here in Los Angeles, when kids can drive at 16 years old, that's generally when the court says these kids are going to go where they want to go. I was divorced 14 years ago. When my daughters were 16, it didn't matter that I had them for a weekend or for a weekday. If they wanted to go with their friends, if they wanted to have their friends here, there, or wherever, they went where they wanted to go. But
they probably came to your house first to get money, and then they went out with their friends. That's probably more likely what a 16-year-old would do.
And that was it. They would run in the door with a whole gaggle of girls. They would run right up to their room, shut the door, and then they'd say, bye, Dad, on the way down the stairs out to their car and out.
So you didn't see that much. That's actually one of the questions I was going to ask, because I was actually going to bring up another case that was recent, because there was a man that is very fast, Usain Bolt and all of that. And I know that he was recently involved in an incident where he said that he was swindled out of a lot of money and all in that space. I'm actually going to bring up a minute video where he talks about that and everything. And I'd love to hear your thoughts and also the thoughts around whether athletes and entertainers and stuff actually have enough knowledge about their financial situations and they're doing a good enough job of financial planning.
Mark, sorry, David, you don't need to respond to this. So just to make sure that we're clear, you're now defending the very rich people because they can't hang on to their money because of mismanagement. Is that correct?
Well, I'm going to see how this all plays out. Let's check out the video and then we'll hear David's comments.
Welcome back, everyone. It is time for Cut for Time. 3 stories, 1 minute each. We start with this today. Olympic legend Usain Bolt says that over $12 million is missing from an account that he had with a private investment firm. Lawyers for Bolt say that his account now only has $12,000 left in it and are prepared to take the case to court if necessary. Now, here's what they're saying about this. If this is correct, then this is a serious case of fraud larceny, and they have also said that there will be civil and criminal action if not returned within 10 days as well.
Nobody likes to open up their account and find a couple of zeros or 3 or 4 zeros lopped off here. Got to do the math. I think it's a sign of the times here. It's no coincidence that we are in the midst of the greatest economic contraction contraction of probably the last 40 years. Liquidity is low worldwide, and anybody who can get their hands on in a mad dash for cash, and if they have to repay other debts, and I'm talking about fraud here, they're going to dip their hands where they can. And so, unfortunately, ease of access in this environment may give people the incentive to do that.
In fact, he's the only person who I've ever seen ride a scooter on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. I thought Dutch would like that one. Yeah.
Dutch would like that one. Yeah.
So, what is your thoughts, David, and everything? Because definitely a lot of folks.
You've muted yourself, Mark.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yep.
Thanks.
Mark, we're talking about adults here, right?
No, we're talking about athletes,
Athletes,
okay.
yeah.
not adults. Okay,
And so-
athletes.
So,
Yeah,
David, you do a lot of work with athletes. You do a lot of work with folks like that are in this kind of category and everything. So, what are your thoughts around the knowledge of whether they are having enough knowledge in financial planning, in the financial things in that space? We talk a lot about and are proponents of financial literacy here on the network. But I was just wondering your thoughts as to whether the athletes and the entertainers are learning enough about these things, because you actually even mentioned it with Lisa Marie Presley.
Yeah, the easy answer is no. I represent, professional sports players and actresses and musicians, all forms of celebrities. They all have business managers, and some of those business managers do the right thing. But there's a long parade of people suing their business managers, at least here in Los Angeles, for not keeping them informed or for using the money in a bad way. And it's a two-sided argument. If you're an adult and you've made a lot of money, I think you have an obligation to check up on your business managers, not wait for a yearly report, open up the account and find that, in this example, 12 million has dwindled down to 12,000. But there are also cases like Elton John sued his business managers in the UK, and they brought out that he was spending $1 million a month on flowers and $2 million a month on chocolates. And so he was part of the problem in his overspending. It also brings up another issue. We've had a lot of celebrities recently dying without having any sort of estate planning. Prince dies without a will, and he has this huge music catalog and royalties and residuals and all sorts of assets. And the case is still being fought out in court there in Minnesota. And the shame of it all is that when you send a case through probate court, almost 50% of the estate disappears to the probate attorneys, the probate investigators, and to just probate fees. All that could have been avoided if he had a simple will saying everything I own pours into a trust.
Well, let me just say a couple of things there, if I can. I know that the obvious response that people might have is that there needs to be more regulations over what investment advisors are doing with funds and what business managers are doing with funds. However, when you're talking about that sort of money, you will have some form, I think it's called accredited investor in the United States, wholesale investor or sophisticated investor in Australia. It's pretty much the same thing around the world. If you're over a certain net worth, it's assumed that you have the ability to manage that. And oftentimes it's not true. And I know a lot of very wealthy people. It oftentimes is not true. And it's up to, I've had people that have said to me, we want to put all of our money in these various things that you're doing. And I'm sitting there saying to them, you cannot put everything that you have with me, right? That's a really bad idea. It's not because I'm not backing myself. It's just that I couldn't in good conscience, recommend that to you. You need to have some diversity amongst your investment advisors. So I think that's an important point. But when it comes to things like wills, when it comes to things like prenuptial agreements to work out what happens to assets in the event of a divorce, I don't think this is just the realm of the very wealthy. I think this should be really taught and drilled into people. They must have this. And, talk about something like a will. Let's talk about something that's not even really worth very much. Let's say you've got your grandmother's wedding dress, right? And the grandkids, there's only two of them. There's a boy and the girl. The boy wants to give the grandmother's wedding dress to his new wife to wear, the girl he's about to marry, and his sister wants to wear the wedding dress and she wants to own it. The wedding dress might not be worth that much, but they're going to fight about this in court. And that's why I think it's really important. And I think it shows a real failure that very wealthy or very high earning people, athletes, actors, singers, that sort of stuff, are not being told, listen, you're going to be coming into some big money here. We need to get this stuff sorted out.
Right. And a good financial advisor or business manager will have a separate person handling finances and then have a separate expert drafting wills and advising on trusts and other options for avoiding taxes. They will have a whole team of people. The problem seems to come when a business manager does it all him or herself. And so at the very least, if you're a person of significant means and you've got income and assets and all these issues, and you have someone managing your funds, a business manager, you should hire an independent fiduciary, someone who is paid by the hour, not based on the size of the estate, not based on commissions for doing trades, but an independent person to review your plan on a yearly basis, so that you get independent advice separate from all the people you already have on the payroll.
David, I'm sorry. Should high schools be doing a better job teaching financial literacy to everybody?
Well, hold on a second, because that's actually where I was going to go as well. Because we heard earlier today Hill Carew talking about name, image, and likeness, and I know that's also down there in the high school level as well, and also the college level. And we do know that a lot of people win lotteries and they get these windfalls of cash. So I just wondered, from your perspective, David, is there enough of that education, as Lee was just saying, that is actually going to our kids? And what are some of the things that you're seeing in LA or just around the world that can actually improve this?
Can I just say something real quick? So Lee, to your point there, if the school system isn't even teaching kids arithmetic and English language skills, etc., what they should do, we can all say they should do this, they should do that. Lots of things should be done, but it's not likely to be done, I don't think. And I just want to make one comment to David. You mentioned about Elton John spending $1 million on flowers and all this sort of stuff every month, but I don't know what his net worth is. Last time I checked, it's around 500, 600 million. Now, let's just say that he makes 10% on those assets every year, plus he has an income. On the 10% passively that he's earning on his $600 million or $500 million, that's $50 to $60 million a year. So, he can afford it. He's earning enough. He can afford to do that. Yeah. So I wouldn't blame him for being spendthrift. I would say that if he has an expectation of how much he's making, he should be able to spend that. We saw this play out in the Amber Heard Johnny Depp trial recently, where we all looked at their finances and went, they're spending what? They're doing what? But, he's worth 150 million, 200 million. So, if you've got that sort of money, you should be able to be able to spend a few percent of it each year and expect that you're earning enough passively without you actually going out and singing another song or acting another movie, to be able to sustain it. That's what I would have thought was reasonable. Is there a specific qualification that you need to become a business manager, or can anyone do it?
Anyone here in the United States, anyone can. They're generally CPAs who've been accountants and then develop a relationship with various people of significant means. But there really isn't a requirement for any of those things. But back to the question of financial literacy, I liken it to when I was in high school. My parents made me take a typing class. And we sat down at a manual typewriter, ASDF, semicolon, LD, all that stuff. And I thought it was crazy. I was the only male in the class at the time. I thought my parents were crazy for doing it. But when I got to college and the Mac computer came out and everyone started doing all their work on a computer, I could type 90 words a minute. And so a simple skill that you could learn early on can pay off a lot later on. So a simple class in how to balance a checkbook, in how investments work, in how various people have been ripped off. That's not even a year-long course. That's a 12-week course that you could offer in high school, in college, anywhere. It's not offered. I'm always shocked by the number of attorneys, psychologists, doctors, lawyers, Indian chiefs who have no idea how to manage their money. They start making money and they have absolutely no idea.
David, as a quick side note, I'm not sure what your complaint was. I did journalism in year 9 because I was the only boy in the class.
Well, yeah, and that's like I took a home ec class. I took a cooking class as the only guy. That was for dating purposes in high school, but the typing paid off.
Sasha, you wanted to say something there.
Yes, Sasha. And Dan.
Oh, no, Shaquille, I just want to make a quick comment when you said that if someone of incredible wealth will buy so much flowers, he can afford it and it's reasonable. And I wanted to add that it may not be reasonable from the point of his money manager because it will be less money to steal from him. So
Yeah, perhaps.
he might object to his buying flowers in such quantity because
Perhaps. But I can tell you, Sasha, I've just had this conversation for the last week or two because some of my when I say some, all of my top clients have said, look, you're going to Africa, all sorts of, don't put me here by myself. You go to Africa, you go to a high risk place. We would like to increase your health insurance policy, and because I smoke and etc., I've got to go in for another health test and blah blah blah. So I was doing all of that. I've discussed with my lawyers how I need to update my will, I need to update all these things, and the insurance policies we owned by my clients. And my lawyer said, technically speaking, I have to advise you that you are putting yourself at risk. That if your investments, that the money that you're managing on behalf of these clients, if it doesn't work out that well, they would have a financial incentive to kill you. And so I've had to put all these other provisions in, to manage all that. But the thing is that I appreciate where my clients are coming from. Was actually my suggestion originally about making sure there's a life insurance policy over me, because I have a lot of discretion over where their funds go, and they may not be able to see where their money is. So I think that's a reasonable thing to do. But it just seems strange that a bunch of investors from Perth, Western Australia, the arse end of nowhere, are going to have more investment know-how than some of the wealthiest people in the United States.
Hey, David, while I'm thinking about it just really quickly, and I don't know if you've got any thoughts about it, but I do want to get to one other case that involved Hollywood and everything, and I would love to hear your perspective from a lawyer standpoint. But I did see that Alec Baldwin has actually been charged with manslaughter in that particular case that went on last year, in that what a lot of folks were saying was an accidental shooting in the film of Rust in New Mexico.
Right.
That was actually 2 years ago, because in 2021 and everything. But I was just wondering, from a legal standpoint, if you had any thoughts or observations about that case, and were you surprised that he was charged?
This involuntary manslaughter.
Right.
Yes.
Meaning he didn't have the intention to do
Absolutely.
it, but he was sort of sloppy in his handling of the gun.
Yeah.
It's a surprising result for most people, because they don't separate civil law and criminal law. So in the civil court, Alec Baldwin did everything he could very quickly and in a very public relations wise way to make amends with the deceased family and husband, to make the husband the executive producer of the continuing filming of the film, to give him money, to make sure that just went away. But the legal standard for a civil case is completely different than a criminal case, and the DA there has complete freedom whether to pursue this or not. It is surprising, at least given the information that's been released to the public, that the person who was holding the gun, even though farther down the line there should not have been live ammunition on set, the ammunition should have been tested before it was put into the gun. The gun should have been declared safe or clean before it gave to him. There are a number of steps before the gun ever got into his hands. It just seems to me, from a liability perspective, he's not the one that the DA should be concerned with. But they are, and so now
LA County prosecuted the whatever the agency is called, the Social Services Agency, over the Gabriel Fernandez case, which I think that there was a lot of balls dropped by that particular agency. Talking from another country, it's clear that bureaucracy had failed not just Gabriel Fernandez, but a number of other children. But you really couldn't go after them. And to me, that just looked like political pandering. It looked like a publicity stunt. And I dare say that's what this is. I can't see how Alec Baldwin would ever be convicted.
Shaquille and David, I'm just dumbfounded. We're talking about the ammunition and whether the gun is loaded. Why is there a need to have a live weapon, loaded or not, on a set?
Wasn't supposed to be live. I mean,
why even have it? Someone brought a live weapon, a real gun, on the set.
Yeah, well,
what was it doing there?
Part of it is they want to make it look realistic.
You can do that without a replica. You can do that with fake guns.
Okay,
Police have this problem all the time, Nick.
Okay,
but Nick, when they did Squid Games,
because
when they did Squid Games, they had plastic replica
by the district attorney. And these people are not supervised. A lot of these people, like the district attorney, is basking in glory because she's bringing charges and she's getting her name in front of the United States and the whole world. A lot of that is the motivation why these charges were sent over. And the media is being complicit by not bringing that out. And I've been in front of these DAs that are little local parentas, and the thing is, they're not held accountable. I'm sorry. So the thing is, the media needs to point out.
Well,
Nick,
Nick, Hollywood.
Nick, I'm not sure you're answering my point. Why should it not be illegal to bring a live weapon, loaded or not, onto a set? Period.
Well, it's a live weapon that's purportedly no ammo is supposed to be there because
forget the ammo. Forget the ammo. You can't take a live weapon into an airport. You'll be arrested.
In other words,
you can make fake guns look real.
So let me ask you a question because I don't think Nick would know this. So you're absolutely right what you say. Generally speaking, in Hollywood, they don't. You look at Squid Games, which is not Hollywood. They use plastic guns, right? And they had a producer or somebody who worked there that would say "bang" really loudly in the background to tell the actors when to react to the gun, and then they would CGI it in later. In the past, they have used blanks and other types of things, or they've used something that looks like a gun that's an exact replica, but just has like some.
We have cat guns when we were kids, Shaquille.
So they would use those sorts of things. But generally speaking, there's not just the rules about not having real guns. When I went for the police department, we were in training exercises. Our guns would actually have screws through them, so they couldn't be fired anyway, but would still be our responsibility to check. But what they would also do is when you're in Hollywood, when you see those shots where someone's pointing a gun at somebody, it's edited to look like that. They're generally never actually pointing a gun, loaded or not, real or not, at anybody. So I'm not 100% sure what's happened here because I haven't read the exact sort of details, but it sounds like he wasn't even shooting. He just sort of shooting the film, I should say. He was sort of testing the gun out and then sort of pointed it and pulled the trigger, which he shouldn't have done. You should have pointed at the ground at least if you're trying to play around with the gun. But I think you're right, Lee. That shouldn't have happened. But the question would be, whose responsibility was it? Now, you could make the argument it was his responsibility because he was actually holding the gun, but you could also make the argument that somebody somewhere has dropped the ball or multiple people have dropped the ball because the gun wasn't just handed straight to him. It went through a process and then was handed to him with live ammunition in it, and that's a mistake that should just never happen.
Right, and it comes down to the munitions expert. Every film has a munitions expert. That person is not supposed to have live rounds. They're supposed to load the fake rounds, the blanks, into the thing, and they're supposed to shake the bullets to make sure they make a certain sound so you know it's a blank. Put it in the gun. Then the gun is handed to the assistant producer, who is supposed to check the gun a second time and announce that it's clean when they hand it over. So there were at least, in this case, 2 steps before it ever got to Alec Baldwin. But to the original question, there is no reason to have any sort of real guns shooting blanks or not. These days, with all the effects they can do, they could use a fake gun. They could add the sound later. Someone could yell bang, and hopefully, although doubtfully, but hopefully the industry looks at this and just says we can't have any sort of live shooting guns on sets. It's too dangerous.
Hey, David, just really quickly, and I know we're winding down and everything. I've got to show a very quick clip, everything, but I'm curious as to how busy you've been with influencers and all along those lines, because I know that for a while there was a short amount of people that could be athletes, they could be entertainers. That's one of the things that a lot of people talk about is that there is not that there's a finite amount of people that are actually making it successfully in those industries. But now with influencers, there's a lot of folks that are making it. They're just common citizens. As a matter of fact, there was one that made a lot of money off of TikTok, off his comments around bi-weekly pay and all of that. And that's what I'm going to bring up and show right now. And then I'd love to hear your thoughts around the notion of influencers and how they're keeping you in.
So you're telling me that the biweekly check was designed to make us think that we're getting more than we're actually getting because we have short-term memories. And then when we see that 2-week check, we think, wow, that's a lot of money. But if they actually handed us our hourly rate in cash every hour, we would start to rethink our choices. We would start to think about how hard we worked over the last hour. And was it worth it? Was it worth this hourly pay? No. They want you to hire on it hourly and then collect your money bi-weekly. Why don't they just hire you at a bi-weekly rate?
He got like about a million. He got like about a million hits, by the way, or
Yeah,
something like that.
the whole system is sort of crazy. But the as far as influencers getting divorced, most of them are too young to be married. I haven't had influencer divorce cases. And although COVID raised the divorce rate here in LA County by 40% for the last 2 years, I just haven't had these influencers. The question will be, what kind of goodwill do they bring to their business? These are solo practitioner businesses. And at least in California, someone who is solely responsible for their business, you can't tie them to making money for that business and making money for their ex-wife or ex-husband if it's their only job. There's no slavery.
David, people will sometimes say that I'm a mad conservative, which I'm not, but they'll also say that I could be a little chauvinistic. But let's be honest here, right? 70 to 80% of divorces are brought by women, and 99.9% of the people that are doing, the fish lips and the bum out, other than Dan Worthington, he'll put his bum out occasionally, but other than him, 99% of the time they're women. So do you think there's any men out there that are going to say, look, my influencer wife, she was getting free fish and chips, or a free steak down at the restaurant for sticking a bum out and doing fish lips. I want to sue her for half that steak. Do you think there's many men in California or otherwise that are doing that?
I doubt it, because again, most influencers are getting free food, free clothing. There are a few people who are making cash off of their YouTube or TikTok videos and advertising. But the other stuff, it all comes down to income. How much real income are you making?
Well,
that will determine spousal support decisions.
Watch this space. I want you to be my lawyer. I want you to study up, because I intend to come to California, date an influencer, and I'm going to say, look, she might not be earning money in the real sense of the word, but she's getting steaks and lobsters and free dresses, and I want half of it. And you're going to be representing me. That's my plan.
And the crazy thing is, there is case law. There's a famous case in California where a son lived in his mother's house for free, and they sent out an appraiser to say if he was renting that house, it would be $7,000 a month. We're going to count him as getting income of $7,000 a month because he gets free housing from his mother. And so it is a potential that
did she win? Did she win the case?
Yes.
So does that then set a precedent then that the IRS could say to every college kid that lives with their parents, because you're living with your parents, you're actually getting a non-cash benefit that we have the right to tax.
Although people aren't obligated to earn money until they've reached majority. And the IRS.
No, that's why I said college kids. I mean, you spent $85 billion employing 85,000 new IRS agents. Is this going to be perhaps the Democrats' new plan? Go after the college kids that are 25 living at home and say the rent money that you're not paying is an income and you should be taxed on it. Because that would set the precedent, right?
Yeah, I doubt it. I think the Democrats here in this country are more interested in the high income earners and the corporations who aren't paying taxes rather than going after the college.
Well, that's what they might say, David.
Shaquille, I do not recommend, as the other lawyer in the group, I do not recommend you come to California, marry a California girl just to get half of her
steak and dresses.
Because you make too damn much money, she's going to sue you for half of what you make.
Dan, do you think I would be this brazen and taunt the tax office on air like I do if I didn't have a team? I spend $1 million a year on lawyers and accountants right now. My assets, also, I want my girl to sign a prenuptial, whatever girl that is, but it doesn't really matter if she doesn't, because you can't get my assets. They're somewhere else. They're not
that's
mine.
right. Hey, David, just really quickly, I'm ready to wind down.
And I learned all of this. I learned how to protect myself because of my last joyous experience in Australia's family court. So yeah, I'm well protected.
Right.
Good man. I just wanted to make sure you're okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Hey, David, just really quickly, because we're getting ready to wind down here now. So the Ukrainian show is running on the other side. That's one great thing about pre-records and all in that line. But just did really quickly and all in that space. I was wondering if you have any thoughts about the possibilities of making it as an influencer. You kind of alluded to it, but a lot of folks, I think that they're going to get rich and famous off of being an influencer. And I know that there are all kinds of plans: YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. All of these have these plans that they think that they're going to get you in order to make a lot of money. I'm thinking that those are not as realistic as people may be thinking they are. But you work out there in the field, so I'd love to hear your thoughts around that.
Yeah, no, it's an exciting topic for young people. The idea that they can just get on their cell phone, make a quick recording. They can get plenty of followers. You can have things go viral. But I've lately been doing my own podcast. I've been posting videos about celebrity divorces. And I've almost gotten up to 1,000 subscribers, which for YouTube is the number that you have to get in order to get some sort of ad revenue. It doesn't work. It's I do it so that people know I'm a divorce lawyer. I'm a former psychologist. Send me your divorce business, but I'm not making any money off the podcast or my postings.
Hey, David,
what if we did this? What if we put surreptitiously, a recording, a phone in when two couples in the heat of the divorce proceedings say these terrible things to them, and we just take the 15-second excerpts out of it, right? Now, you can't do it, but I can because I'm not American, right? So I'll put it in my account. We'll go on TikTok. We'd make a fortune, wouldn't we, David? I'll just slip it under the table to you.
Other than the wiretap statute, which requires two-party consent to do any of these.
Yes, but the thing is, David, they wouldn't actually have an expectation of privacy because they would have themselves, lawyers that'd be in a room, right? So two couples are going at each other with their lawyers, so there's no expectation of privacy. And I'm not American, so what's America going to do? Is America going to say, hey, Australia and England, can you please send him over to California? He's in breach of our wiretapping rules. I think I could get away with this.
Hey, David, just really quickly.
And if you're in trouble, you're a lawyer. You can bail me out. Dad's a lawyer. I reckon we've got a plan here.
It sounds like a good plan. David, just really quickly, because I know we're winding down. We're actually going a little bit over, but this has been a fun and enjoyable conversation. I think that Shaquille had something he wanted to bring up really quick, and if he still wants to bring that up, we can still go over. But just really quickly, in all of those lines, what is the similarity between being a clinical psychologist and a lawyer and all in that space? Because when I first read that about you, I'm going like, those seems like they could be two different fields, but they can also be two very common fields that have some similarities. But I just wanted your take on these two fields because you're both a psychologist and a lawyer. Then they have some different views. Some people hate their psychologists. Some people hate their lawyers. Some people love their psychologists. Some people love their clinical psychologists and their lawyers. But I just wanted your thoughts about the similarities and the differences.
Sure.
I'll have to ask you a clarification question when you finish.
So years ago, I went to a dual degree program in law and psychology where you'd get your law degree and your psychology PhD, and they cram it into 5 years. And there's only a couple programs in the United States like this. My goal was to become a forensic psychologist and to do research on the intersection of law and psychology. My short time practicing as a psychologist told me that I would not make it well as a psychologist. It was too sedentary for me, as opposed to a summer job I'd worked in family law, which is exciting and moving around and dealing with different people on a daily basis. So I jumped into family law 25 years ago, and I haven't looked back. I still have a PhD, but I'm no longer licensed as a psychologist. For me, the intersection is that most divorce lawyers have their people into their office. They say, we can get you this much alimony, we can get you half of the house, etc. I'm trying to work with my clients on a more overall basis, that they all get referrals to therapists, because I think everyone going through a divorce has some issues to work through, at the very least, to help improve themselves as they go on for their post-divorce life. Every one of my clients gets a referral to a money manager, an independent fiduciary, someone to give them advice on where they're going. And so I'm trying to help people through the divorce process and in the year after divorce. That's where the law and psychology come together for me. Again, you don't need the PhD, obviously, to be a divorce lawyer. There's very few people out there like me with both degrees, but I think I'm doing my part.
David, let me ask you a clarification question. Let's get you to turn off the lawyer side of you and come back to the psychology side. Now, I often say that, look, lawyers, they go to university or college, whatever you have over there. They're generally not the people at the top of the class, right? Because those kids go to medicine or physics or, those sorts of fields. So these guys become lawyers, and then they seem to know everything because they litigate, they make the rules, they enforce the rules, and if you've ever read a law book, you know what the laws look like when you read them. And it goes refer to subsection this and that. It's terrible, right? And then they go to politics, or they become judges, and they give themselves titles. They call themselves Your Honor, or they give themselves all these great titles. And Dan, who's a former dean of a law school, Nick, who's a lawyer in front of the Supreme Court. We've got a lot of lawyers on the show, and I've asked the deans of some Ivy League universities. It's the same question I'm going to ask you. But I'm not going to ask you this question as a lawyer. I'm going to ask you the question as a psychologist. What would be the definition of a group of people that really believe that they are the experts in everything from healthcare to energy to food safety to road rules? Is there a bigger group of egotistical, self-deluded narcissists than lawyers that you can think of?
Right. Probably not. In order, I mean, I've got a quick story. My dad's a doctor. My mom's a psychologist. I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and my dad got me a job at his hospital as an orderly, bringing people in and out of the operating room. I couldn't take the blood and the drilling and the hammering and all the stuff that was going on. I said, I'm not going to be a doctor. And my dad said, you know, what's a good Jewish boy who hates the sight of blood? And the answer is a lawyer. So there is some truth to people not being able to do other things and then going into law. But when you become a lawyer, there's a degree of narcissism. You're not a narcissist, but there's a degree of narcissism you need to have.
And self-delusion.
That you feel that you can, whether one way or another, either collect the information or get experts to teach you the information, that you need to know everything about X to go into court. I recently represented a dentist, and I had to find out all about his practice, including how often does he replace his instruments? And who cares how often he replaces the stuff he picks at your teeth with? Well, if he's depreciating those new expenses as a business expense, but they last for 10 years, it's fake money he's depreciating. That's money that could be added back to what he's really earning and could be paying in support. So I had to become an expert in dental practices in order to go into court. So there are two sides to the story, but there are more people.
Is that an admission to your father that you actually got it wrong when you said that you didn't like the sight of blood and the drilling and all the noise? You left medicine and went into family law, which has lots of blood, lots of drilling,
lots of blood.
And essentially a concession there to your
blood
dad.
sport.
It's a blood sport, but it's virtual.
It's a virtual blood sport. Hey, David, along those same lines, you got a lot of folks that will swear up and down that the lawyers are in control of the world, whether that's entertainment, whether that's politics, whether that's sports, whether that's a number of other things. And I was just
during COVID, whether or not you
that.
leave
Are
your
the
house,
lawyers actually
whether or not you
in
go
charge
see
of
your
the world?
family, you know. Sorry, go on, Mark.
So, David, are the lawyers actually in charge of the world over there in the entertainment field? Because I know that that's something that the common man will oftentimes be complaining about. They'll be like, well, you know, it's the lawyers, certain cultural groups that are in charge of Hollywood and all in that space. So I was wondering your take on this as one that is actually working there in the industry.
Yeah, I think there is some truth to that. There are tons and tons of lawyers who never practice law. They go to law school for the training and the way of thinking, or they practice law for a short time and then jump out of it because most lawyers are unhappy practicing. I happen to enjoy family law, but they jump into politics or entertainment or management, and they use the skills they learned in law school or as a junior lawyer to then turn it into a successful career. Certainly, our Congress is filled with former lawyers, and they're the people who are making the laws. And that's why the laws against attorneys, it's hard to win a malpractice case against an attorney. It's a lot easier to win a malpractice case against a doctor.
Yeah, makes sense. Shaquille, before I hit that magic button, did you just want to give a quick comment to the folks about what's going on in Australia and New Zealand, to be exact, and then we're going to get out of here with that comment.
Oh, look, I think I've exceeded my weekly quota of wisecracks. So I hope I'm glad to see David smiled at most of them. Look, no, I'll just simply say to the people internationally who think that because Prime Minister Ardern was the darling of the left around the world, it's not because of this male chauvinism that has occurred in New Zealand or in Australia or on the international stage. That's not why she's stepped down. She stepped down because she was going to lose the election. We all know that. She has made a whole heap of promises that, she hasn't been able to fulfill. New Zealand is in a substantially worse place than what they were before. You've had a 500% increase, according to Winston Peters, of people sleeping in their cars since the Labor Party took control of New Zealand. Okay, so the idea that it's because of the patriarchy running international politics, give me a break. And the fact that she has played all these cards in order to win power and now wants to play the gender card as a reason as to why politics, she needs to spend more time with the family. And poor her, she had to delay her marriage. Yeah, so did everyone else in New Zealand because of COVID. Okay, that she locked down the South Island because there was one case on the North Island. So let's not muck around with each other, okay? If you have a policy and it's controversial and you're being criticized for it, and you take a risk and you get it wrong, okay, then you sit there and you say to people, look, I got it wrong. You probably want a new leader. I did my best. I hope you don't feel too badly about me, but I'm out of here. Good luck. I hope the best for the country. What you don't do is you sit there and blame other people. And to blame the chauvinism of Australia for her plight. Really. And I might just remind, especially the Democrats in the United States who seem to love her, especially the really progressive ones, who know nothing about Australia, but seem to want to make comments about what we should do with our, with our outback and all these different things. And the Canadian Liberals. Might just remind you that one of the reasons Winston Peters put her in power was because she was going to reduce immigration rates. How does that fit with the left-wing agenda at the moment? Mm-hmm. And now, finally, we have seen New Zealand, the only Five Eyes nation in memorable history that has actually had negative net migration. That is an appalling statistic. We are the most desirable countries for people to come to. Also, I will remind both the United States and Canada, who seem to have this rose-tinted view of Jacinda Ardern, that when it came to criticizing China about what the Five Eyes nations call human rights abuses, she is the only one that balked. But this is the person that is being kind. Well, she wasn't kind to the people that asked for our help. She wasn't kind to New Zealanders who are suffering. She wasn't kind to New Zealand's youth that are leaving New Zealand in droves, predominantly to Australia, for better opportunities. She has been an awful Prime Minister for New Zealand. And anybody outside of New Zealand and Australia who thinks, well, she's a woman, so therefore she's a fantastic Prime Minister, should maybe have a look at what her results have been for New Zealand before they start lecturing the rest of us about our misogyny.
Fair enough and everything. David, just really quickly, because I was going to throw something and Shaquille's going to love me throwing this at you and everything. I was just wondering if there was, because there are organizations that are out there and sometimes those organizations get significant amounts of money and sometimes they do crazy things like buying homes and buying things that are elaborate with the money that they've got from their political endeavors and their activism endeavors. And by the way, in case you hadn't picked it up, I consider myself an activist and all in that space, but I don't approve when certain people do stuff in that realm. Hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Here's the whole story. An activist of what?
I'm getting to the story. Shaquille, would you let me finish? Because one of the things I was going to ask, because it was directly toward David, is I was actually referring to the Black Lives Matter movement and some of the houses that they bought and all in that space. So I was just wondering whether, as we close out, whether David had handled any of those cases and what his thoughts were when activists decide to actually invest in some things that they might not have needed to invest in when the money is supposed to be going for whatever the cause is and all along those lines. So I was wondering, David, your thoughts on that.
But that mark, before you respond, David, but that mark is what you specifically support, right? The founders of BLM.
I don't support the founders of BLM.
No. The founders of BLM are avowed Marxists. Now, what do Marxists do? They steal from the rich, they steal from the poor, and they give it all to themselves.
Well, first off,
and they're in charge of everything. That's what you say you support. So
hold on a second. First off, you're assuming that I'm an avowed Marxist. Remember, I also
no. I didn't say you were. I didn't say you were an avowed Marxist. I said the founders of BLM are, and you supported them no matter what they did. They riot, they did whatever. That's what you said. Dan, isn't that what he said on previous shows? That he's a supporter
Yeah.
of what they
But
do?
hey, I had to point out those were mostly peaceful riots.
Mostly peaceful protests.
With everything burning in the background.
And he said
looting,
and he
all that.
said-
Yeah, I remember all that.
He's made his comments. Well, it's about this, and he has a
Those
friend.
were
that doesn't feel that
reparations.
way.
The looting was
Yes.
reparations, according to OAC. The looting was
Well,
reparations.
some people may think that, but David,
Okay,
I want to
David.
hear your comments and everything.
Yeah.
Along this
Yeah.
because you had
Welcome to the
represented
show,
because you are in the entertainment space. There are activists, plenty of them out in LA. We know that
Mm-hmm.
Rodney King was out there. There were a number of other ones that have fallen into the activism space. We know the famous OJ case was out there and everything. So I was wondering if you have represented any of these folks and what your political thoughts were or your lawyer thoughts were on those lines.
I haven't represented any of those folks. I haven't opposed any of those people in court. It just seems to me that money corrupts. People maybe get into it for the right reasons. Listen, I'm on the board of the Alzheimer's Association, and 82% of the money we collect through donations goes to programming for families of Alzheimer's, goes to medical research, and only that small part is saved for the overall administration. And we're really careful about that. So if an organization is very careful about how they use their money, charitable organizations can do amazing things. And Alzheimer's Association has raised the research dollars in the U.S. from 300 million up to 3 billion in the last 10 years.
Good work.
In recognition of the rising crisis with older people and dementia and Alzheimer's.
Mhm.
The problem comes in when someone gets popular, they get a popular idea, people jump behind it, and the money starts flowing in. And whether it's Sam Bankman-Fried or it's the Black Lives Matter, they start spending the money on themselves and things that are not associated with their movement, and that's where things go wrong.
And that's fraudulent.
Right.
To be fair, though, Hollywood never talks about the great people in finance or the great people that didn't do anything wrong. They took Jordan Belfort. They make this fantastic movie, The Wolf of Wall Street, about him, and everyone laughs. Like, it was a great movie, great actors. Margot Robbie was an Australian actor. Fantastic film, right? But Jordan Belfort was a prick, and what he did was clearly wrong. But they're going to make it look also cool, and it was also fun, and it was all that. And when they make a movie about Sam Bankman-Fried, look, the guy's in his 20s. He pulls a caper, is what we call it here in Australia. He pulls a caper, gets billions of dollars. He's got himself sitting next to presidents. He's got himself sitting there next to the world leaders. He's got this penthouse apartment in the Bahamas. He's screwing all the women because he's convinced them about this polygamy, thing. I mean, the guy's living the dream. So, I think a lot of us, I wouldn't personally because I have more morals than that, but I think there's a lot of people out there that would say, you know what, if I can get away with that for 10 years and I've got to do 20 in jail, probably have a crack. I'll probably get some good lawyers. I'll drag it out a bit. I'd probably give it a go. And you know what? In 10 or 15 or 20 years from now, we're going to watch a movie about him, and they're going to make that look cool as anything. People are going to feel about him like they do about Jordan
glorify
Belfort.
him.
Amazing guy. Well, how much fun? What a great caper. And they're not going to tell the story of all the people that got hurt. They're not going to talk about all the people that were honest in the industry, that were pioneers, that were trying to actually achieve anything. No, those people don't get the attention. It's just the bad eggs that get the attention.
Hey, David, on that note, and I'm going to let you get out with a kind of a frivolous conversation, but a fun conversation. And you can actually tackle one of the movies that is dealing with some things around financial gains. It's an older movie, but I was actually a fan of Pursuit of Happiness, which is a movie about somebody that went from the rough side of life and then became famous and definitely had some money and success and all in those lines. I was also a fan of Avatar and also a fan of some of the Wakanda Black Panthers movies, as well as.
Is that a white Irish guy that was in that Pursuit of Happiness film? Is that a white Irish guy that sort of built his way up from nothing? Or?
No, it's an African American gentleman.
Oh, was it? Okay, he was good actor. I hear he's a bit slap happy, that actor.
Yeah, he is a bit slap happy and all of that. But I was just wondering.
Yeah, but he deserved it. Chris Rock deserved it.
Chris Rock probably did deserve it. If you got any comments on that slap, I'd love to hear that as well. But my quick question to you, outside of that slap, was what are, let's just say, but before we get out of here, 5 or 6 of your favorite movies. You've been there in Hollywood for a while. You're a Hollywood lawyer, do a lot with custody. You probably work with some of these actors, or even among the movies that you might be naming. But I'm gonna give you 6. Just gotta pick a random number. But what are like maybe 6 of your favorite movies? And off of that note, we'll get out of here. And if you want to comment on the SAP,
Wow. So, yeah.
around the world.
A tough question. First of all, I'm remarried and I have a 6-year-old and a 2-year-old boy. So we haven't been to the movies in 6 years. So all of my references are dated. But a movie I put up there are any of the Godfather movies. Whenever I'm flipping around on the TV and any of even Godfather 3, which is not a good movie, I'll watch it. Forrest Gump, I think, is a wonderful movie. The way it moves through various historical periods puts him into it in a very funny way, and teaches a lesson. Gosh, what other movies? The Shawshank Redemption for me is also something that just an amazing movie about how people can change themselves under extreme circumstances and still come out on top. But I'm gonna wrap it up there with those 3 rather than going to 6. And stretching myself.
I think we should hear the 3 top ones from Lee and Dan as well. I think we want to hear your 3, Mark.
I'll just give you 2 quick ones: The Sting and Absence of Malice.
Oh, those are classics, no doubt about it.
Yeah.
For me, it's too many to count. I love movies. I do like all the Star Wars movies because I'm into that. All the ones David mentioned, I really liked as well. Another one that I liked was the one about the Holocaust and the fellow that saved so many Jewish
Schindler's
lives.
List.
Right.
Yeah, boy, that was heartbreaking to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Very emotional, but it was well done and a very important message to give to the world.
Well, there's a couple of movies that I'm a big fan of. I could, like Dan, go on movies all day long because I'm actually a big movie fan. I've actually did like both of the Avatar movies, including the latest one that is out there, and all into that
You
space.
said your all-time favorites, Mark. That's what you said. All-time favorites.
Well, I mean, Avatar is a new one, but it's not an all-time favorite. West Side Story is up there as an all-time favorite. There is an independent film that a lot of people may not know that was done by Holly Garema called Sankofa, and all in that space. So I'm a big-time fan of that particular movie and all in that kind of way. And of course, there's some classic movies from the 70s like Claudine and Mahogany that I'm a big fan of as well.
Y'all have a good weekend. Enjoy.
Thanks for having me on.
Oh, Shaquille.
I thought I got away with that. I thought I got away with that then.
No.
Wizard of Oz, the original one. Silence of the Lambs, because I'm a bit of a psycho like that.
Oh, yeah.
Wall Street, Glenn Ross, and of course the film that I produced, and Hero.
Sounds good. And on that note, we're going to get out of here.
I thought maybe this is a 2-hour special, Mark.
Yeah, well, we have
almost, but we just had a fun conversation. We're
very special.
I was about to send it to rebroadcast mode because we broadcast it several times today.
Cool.
And then I'm going. I came back on. I'm going. This is running live. What's going on?
Yeah.
It's time to end it right
Well,
now.
that makes up for all those shows that we forgot to go live. We've been talking, so that's all right, Nick.
Oh, but Nick, since you popped in, we were having a full conversation. You are one of the owners of the network. So before I hit that button, we were talking about movies. David is out there in LA. So some of your favorite movies, give me like 2 or 3 in the all-time list, and then I'll hit the magic button.
Movies, all-time list. All the movies I watch are bad movies, Mark. So
what are we going with, Nick? Sesame Street, the animated version, is that high up on the list?
Yeah,
who killed Roger Rabbit because there's that gorgeous redhead in it. These are the films that Nick likes.
Yeah, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. That's a safe one.
That's always a safe one. On that note, we're getting ready to get on out of here. Okay.